everybody, how you doing? Time for another Watts Weekly, and kind of been smattering with all kinds of older content that we had, as well as me occasionally sitting down in between chaotic episodes with the school and all, and getting something for you guys. So I've got a lot of ideas, and we'll be again continuing to dole them out. We've been pretty consistent with them, so I'm really happy about that. I hope you've been enjoying them, and I hope you've been enjoying your studies, whether you're on the streaming or you're on the actual online program, or possibly even visiting us from the brick and mortar. We've seen a lot of you trickling in as we've opened back up, and it's been really fun to see everybody in person and put some faces to names. People that I've had in my streaming classes that I'm finally now getting to meet firsthand. So we've really been enjoying it, and I hope you're liking the content. I'm really pleased with everything we've been putting out lately. So today I thought I would talk a little bit about the importance of graphite, which is something our school's not really known for. It's really probably known most for its charcoal drawing style, the Riley method, the abstractions, all that kind of good stuff. But what a lot of people don't know is that one of the hardest things to teach or learn is very specific design. And when you talk about design, it's not just like graphic design, but it's spatial breakup and things like that. But it's getting into the nuanced aspect of lassoing shapes within forms, meaning like halftones that are pretty ambiguous in the photo or in the model in front of you, and finding a way to creatively knit those together in a way that creates shapes out of that ambiguity and gives more strength to the image. And so a lot of times I'll tell people you want to make your drawing look better than what you're drawing from, whether it's reference or a model. Well, what does that really mean? Well, it means interpreting reality through a filter of design. And that design comes from studying usually other great designers, because when you first start drawing, even if you're quite adequate at drawing, you really don't have a proper platform from which to explore that from what I've seen. And that means a library of indication and stylization has to be somehow put in place. Well, how does one do that? Well, number one, you can be around, if you're lucky enough to be around guys like myself or Eric or anyone that I trained, or people that are Steve Houston. I mean, there's any number of people out there that are phenomenal designers. Michael Butkus comes to mind. He's an illustrator, phenomenal. And then I've got this stack of books in front of me, which is the lineage which I really dove into when I was a student, which is Alphonse Mucha, Czechoslovakian, late 1800s, really fantastic designer, one of the best designers ever. I mean, really, quite frankly. So this is just some of his little drawing books. And these books I would go through and I would scour and I would copy them and I would draw them, and I would draw them in different mediums. I'd do them in ink. I would do them in ballpoint pen. I would do them in graphite. I would do them in charcoal. And I would just start to try to get my head around how that particular artist lassoed shapes, how they designed their halftones, how they filled in their shadows. Did they do it linear, or did they do it tonal, or did they do it with a hybrid style? So that's very helpful. Then after him came Leyendecker. And Leyendecker was a famous illustrator prior to Rockwell, doing the Saturday Evening Post illustration covers mostly. But he was another guy that had a very distinct style of breaking down forms, whether it's drapery or highlights on skin or hands or heads or anything. He designed impeccably. And he was kind of a follower of Mucha, in my opinion. He stole a lot from Mucha, borrowed a lot from Mucha, whatever you want to call it. And then we go to our Drew Struzan, who Drew was famous for a lot of the book covers in the 80s and 90s, a lot of Spielberg's movies, a lot of the iconic ones, all the Indiana Jones, Star Wars with Lucas. So he did a lot of the most famous movie posters, and he had a brilliant style of lassoing shape using Prismacolor on top of acrylic. So he follows in also the footsteps of Leyendecker. Leyendecker follows in the footsteps of Alphonse Mucha. So there's three designers right there that you could spend the rest of your life just pulling apart, copying, studying, interpreting, going into class, injecting some of that into your own work, seeing how it plays out, putting your own spin on it. Then we go to the Russians. Now the Russians have a certain style of design that's nowhere near as posh and polished as the last three that I told you, because the last three were fairly commercial artists. When we get into the Russians, we get into a more guttural style of design. Design from the sense of kind of more gritty, more honest. Something I really value in studying the Russians. And so this book is I got it on a trip with Stan Prokopenko. Many of you guys know Stan from Proko. He was a student of mine for many, many, many years, probably 13 years. And we went to Russia together with his family years ago. And I picked this up at the Representational Institute, which is one of their, main, huge schools in St. Petersburg. And it was it's a beautiful book. And it's chock full of drawings that you can study. It's got drapery drawings in it. It's got beautiful calligraphy that you can borrow from, right? When you look at the Russians, you'll have, just beautiful drawings in these books that you can borrow the calligraphy and inject it into your drawing. And that's a great way to go. So you can maybe do a master study of this one. Then you go into a piece of reference like the one that I used for the one that's behind me. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And you can basically try to, get your mojo going with the design, get it in your head, get your hand kind of mimicking it. Then you go into your life drawing class, your long graphite class, long charcoal class, whatever, your class you're in. And you can then inject some of that in. So those books are really helpful. You can get them at a place called Gallery Nucleus in Alhambra, California, which is just north of us, about a couple hours. And it's a small store, but they always bring in these Russian books. And I used to buy them almost sight unseen. They're large format books. So a few years ago, I went and made one similar, same format. And my goal was just to provide you guys with my calligraphy, right, in large format, so you could really study all the intricacies. So this book's still available. You can get it through us at wattsatelier.com. It's not a hard sales pitch on it, but it's a beautiful book. And if you like my calligraphy and you like big images, this is the kind of book I like. I don't want a lot of words. I don't want a lot of banter. I want as many images that I can get into my head as possible. So whenever I find a book that's got a lot of meaty, beautiful images in it, I am going to buy it, because I can get a lot of that out, and the value of that calligraphy could be invaluable, right? So when we talk about putting a design sense in place, so a lot of times you hear me say teaching is difficult because you're basically putting an eye in place and a hand, which means you're using or renting my eyeballs and my hands until your dexterity and your interpretation ability gets somewhere up in that elite level. Now that can take years, as many of you already know, and you know that I'm very honest about the process of training, and I don't sugarcoat it or fluff it up, right? It's hard. It takes a long time. It takes discipline. It takes focus. It takes the 3 Ps, patience, persistence, and perseverance. It takes all these, going to live classes, working on longer efforts, working on shorter efforts, working on quick sketch, working on 20-minute lay-ins, working on, 20-hour, 30-hour charcoal drawings, or graphite drawings. So what we have here, I just taught this class on the online streaming. Some of you took it with me. And I provided the reference, and it was beautiful reference. I think I have it here, right? Just really beautiful, no excuses, about as good as it's going to get. But even here, you'll see the ambiguity of a lot of blown out areas in the reference that need to be clarified. Well, that's where your knowledge comes in. So when I go flesh out the intricacies of this back, it's an interpretation of that photo, and I want it to look better than that photo. I don't want to look all smooth and glassy like Silver Surfer, right? I want to put some soul into that, right? I want to get some cross-contouring, some inking information in there. I want to get some linear accents that look tonal when you step back from it. When you get up on it and look at it, there's all these intricate little knitted together shapes that still read tonally but have a linear undertone. That's what I think the most beautiful drawing exists for me. Now, some other people might say, no, Jeff, I like this glassy, smooth, sugary, constipated looking drawings. And I don't mind those occasionally, but that's really going to be up to you. If you want to do that, knock yourself out. And it's okay, because there's room for everybody. I'm just telling you, I have strong opinions about my design and what I like. And I think a lot of people, I've been very successful over the years in helping jumpstart that design sense in people. Now, they're going to branch off into their own direction ultimately anyway. When they leave the school or when they move on, after a time, the learnings that they learned from me and Eric and Ben and the rest of all the people that worked with us, Brian and Meadow, and go down the list, Jim, they're going to find their own way of owning that knowledge. And then it will become their own. But that can take a long time. I mean, I feel like just now in my life, I have a strong identity with my drawings that people could recognize and that I feel comfortable with. I felt like that probably 10 years in, 15 years in, but up until that point, it was just nice drawings. They weren't, and they had aspects of really great calligraphy, but I needed to learn inking. I needed to learn other ways of doing linear expression to put back into my tonal drawings. And so this one, if you look at it really closely, it's just got all kinds of intricate little nuanced information. I'm not saying it's the best drawing ever, but it is a very nice drawing. And I will claim that, I will own that, and I will not shy away from saying, damn, that's a freaking good drawing, right? That's a good effort. Now, there's room for improvement always. And so I'm always looking for new designers. I'm always looking for new people that I can borrow from and, you know, and use that information. And the way I do that is I sit down with that person and I immerse myself in their drawings, looking at them intensely, drawing from them intensely. And I usually give myself a couple months of drawing from that person. That's not like maniacal drawing. I don't drop everything and sit down and lock myself in a room and draw from Claire Wendling for 42 hours a day. You know, it's more like I just every once in a while sketchbook from that person. I look at them. I have the book by my bed. I go to bed and I look at some of the pages in it and I just take them in. I drink them in for 3 or 4 minutes, right? And I look at all the little nuances and I try to imprint in my mind what it is I like about the feeling of those so that when I look at my own drawings happening, I can recognize that feeling and know that my drawing is in a good direction because I don't have a photographic memory. And I'm sure many of you don't either. So if you don't, what you have, the next best thing is you got to kind of somewhere where you got to hack it or hardwire your mind to be able to be more visual or somehow pull information out that's deeply rooted in the neurons in your brain, right? And so I'm not totally sure how that happens. I've seen it and witnessed it being put in place with artist after artist over many, many years of training, teaching, 30 years now. I've seen a lot of people get phenomenal and they don't have photographic memories. So don't worry if you don't. It's just a lot of hard work that you have to do because you don't have that gift, right? But the thing that you'll learn from all those hard efforts, those honest efforts, those integrous efforts, is you'll build character. And character is what we want because that's what gets us through the hard times. That's what gets us through the pandemics. That's what gets us through financial hardships, people passing away that we love. All these things that we're going to have to confront as a working artist and still produce and produce well in the midst of those trials and tribulations, right? Because life is not going to sit and just hang out and give you a silver platter with everything on it, right? So we all know that. Some of us are learning it for the first time, you know, through this last period. Many of us have been through many of them, so we all know it all too well. But the key is, can you produce stuff like that while, you know, bombs are going off and crazy stuff's going on in your life? And I've found that my art actually ends up as an anchor point during those times and actually is a place of refuge. You know, it's an oasis in the desert. You know, it's where I go to feel safe when things don't feel safe, you know. So I find great solace in the art craft, the art language, the art spirit that really has carried me through a lot of stuff. So I hope that ends up being the same for you. But you will have to when we talk about design, again, I'll try not to stay on point here. I'll try to stay on point here. Is that it's a very nuanced, subtle language, or I even say language is, because you have to also transfer this knowledge will come over into oil. Now, oil doesn't operate like that. You can't do little cross-hatching like that. You can try, but it's not built for that. So I found that graphite is a better way to cultivate an eye for design and then let it naturally transition and translate into these other mediums. And it will, because it's imprinted in you. It starts to become part of the way you think. So you'll find your way into oil and you'll do something very unique with it that no one else does based on your design sensitivity. And that'll then you'll start looking at painters and you'll say, well, I like this painter and that painter and I like so-and-so. And you'll start to do the same thing you did in drawing with painting. And you'll start to build a library of indication and painters that you really enjoy that you kind of want to work like. And you can't work like them all. I mean, you could, but you know, at some point you're going to want to get an identity and you're going to want to paint in a certain vein. So just know, design is what we're talking about today. It's a crafty little bugger, but it is totally doable. And the best way I know is to be around good people that do it, watch them do it a lot if you can, like being in a class with me or whatever, and just start to slowly absorb the decisions by looking at what we're drawing, looking at how we're interpreting it, see what you like that we did differently than what the image is presenting, and say, I see what he did differently there. I don't know exactly what he's doing yet because I don't know my anatomy good enough, but I see him doing something different and I like it more than what I'm seeing. That's the first thing. I remember sitting next to guys in class and they were just blew my mind because I was new and I didn't know, and they knew, and they were designing the model, not copying the model. And I didn't know that. No one even told me that, right? So I had to figure that out on my own. And it seems like common sense now that I think back on it, but it wasn't at the time. And that's why I'm trying to share this with you right now, because you might be thinking, well, how do I get my drawings to look really neat like Jeff's or really neat like Eric's? Or, well, it's a culmination of many things. It's not one individual thing. So that's the first thing to remember. And that's why sometimes I'll get you to back into learning, come through a back door. Like I'll say, do inking. You say, well, I don't want to be an inker. Why would I want to do ink? Because it makes you think in a certain way that allows you to lasso shapes and design shape in a way that you never would do in paint or in other tonal mediums. And that will somehow find its way into your design sense of your other mediums and make them better. Now, you just got to trust me on that one, and I've got your back, and I'm not telling you anything that, I'm not leading you astray. That is just the way it works from what I've seen. Now, that comes down to hacking. You know, you really can't hack a lot of this stuff. You just got to go through it. You got to learn it, and you got to do a lot of just persistent practice with it. And hopefully it's fun, right? It's fun to look at Drew Struzan's work. It's fun to try to figure out how he does what he does. It's fun to look at Mucha. It's fun to look at Leyendecker and then try to do a copy of him. And I find that enjoyable. I like going and doing these kind of drawings, you know, and seeing what has stuck and what's coming out from all those studies I've done. So that needs to be a game you play with yourself, and it needs to be enjoyable, but it's also going to feel like work, right? So we can have fun working. Why not? You know, it's just, we're just sitting and doing some drawing, right? So in this class, this was probably an hour a week demo. So that's 5 hours of demoing. And then I probably did another 5 hours on it. So it's about a 10-hour drawing for me. Many of my students are already up to like 20 or 30 hours on theirs because they're a lot slower and they need to process a lot slower. And a lot of times you have to fix things or remove things and replace them. But we had some amazing drawings done in that class, and hopefully maybe we can shoot a couple up. I don't know. We'll see if that's okay to shoot up a couple of these drawings that were done in the class so you can see my drawing and then what some of the people did in it. And a lot of these people are not totally seasoned. They just, you know, the nice thing about this kind of graphite drawing is it's good for really beginners and it's really good for extremely advanced and everything in between. Why? Because it gives you extra time for your lay-in. It gives you extra time for your mapping phase. It gives you extra time to massage and bring it up leisurely. Whereas when we're in 2-hour classes, it's just like, it's fast and you don't have time to get to that. You're going to get a faux version of that kind of finesse because there's no way to finesse something to that level in such a short period of time. So these longer graphite classes serve many purposes. They're kind of a finality aspect to our school where it's kind of like you are now doing your pieces for galleries, or you're going to do a drawing that's worthy of a frame, worthy of matting and framing and putting on the wall, even though I think some of our charcoals are by far worthy of that. But this is where you're using an archival surface. You're not using newsprint, and you're really giving it your best shot to get a really, really finished drawing the way you see in those Russian books or all the great lineage of great draftsmen that have come before us. So I hope that was inspirational, and I want you to enjoy this process and know that we're here for you, and these classes will be available. I've got a great graphite class in the drawing program where I do one of these, and then Jim Hahn, who's phenomenal with graphite, does another one. And I think that's either phase 5, I believe, of the online program. So if you want to go check that out, you can check it out there. The streaming class at some point will be re-available either in the actual online, or we'll rerun it as a audit only, or maybe even as me doing the crits, but we just you'll be doing this drawing. So if you didn't get it this last time, look for it in the future. You'll probably be able to catch it on the next go around. So anyway, keep pushing play. I love you guys. I hope you're doing well. I hope everyone's healthy, and have a good one. Happy studies. Cheers.